The city bus was crowded that afternoon, a mix of tired commuters, chattering students, and shoppers with their arms full of bags. Among them stood an old man, his figure frail, but his posture ramrod straight. He wore a military uniform, but it was far from pristine. The fabric was faded, the seams were frayed, and a few small, carefully mended tears were visible if you looked closely. It was clean, but it had clearly seen better days. Decades ago. A group of teenagers boarded at the next stop, loud and boisterous. They jostled their way to the back, their eyes scanning the passengers. One of them, a boy with a backwards baseball cap, nudged his friend and pointed. "Check out Grandpa over there," he snickered. Playing dress-up. His friends joined in, their laughter sharp and cruel. "Dude, that thing looks like it came out of a museum's trash can," another one added. The old man didn't react. He simply stared ahead, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the bus window, his expression unreadable. His silence seemed to fuel their mockery. They whispered louder, making comments about his age, his costume, and his apparent poverty. Other passengers shifted uncomfortably. Some shot disapproving glances at the teens, but no one said a word. It was easier to look away, to pretend they couldn't hear. The old man seemed to be in his own world, unaffected by the cloud of disrespect forming around him. A few stops later, another man got on. He was younger, perhaps in his late 40s, with a confident stride and a neatly trimmed beard. He wore a simple polo shirt and jeans, but carried himself with an air of quiet authority. He found a spot to stand near the front, but his eyes, like everyone else's, were eventually drawn to the scene at the back of the bus. He saw the old man in the worn-out uniform, and he heard the snide remarks from the teenagers. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. He started to move towards them, a reprimand forming on his lips. He was a veteran himself, having served 2 tours overseas, and the sight of someone disrespecting a uniform, any uniform, boiled his blood. But as he got closer, he stopped, dead in his tracks. His eyes widened, and his breath caught in his throat. He wasn't looking at the frayed collar or the faded color anymore. He was looking at a small, tarnished badge pinned just above the old man's right breast pocket. It was a badge he recognized instantly, one he had only ever seen in history books and military museums. It was the Congressional Medal of Honor. The veteran felt a wave of awe wash over him, followed by a surge of white-hot anger directed at the oblivious teenagers. He froze, not out of fear, but out of profound, bone-deep respect. This man wasn't just some old-timer in a raggedy outfit. It was a hero, a living legend. The highest military decoration in the United States is not given out lightly. It is awarded for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his or her life above and beyond the call of duty. This frail old man had, at some point in his life, demonstrated a level of courage that few could even comprehend. The veteran walked forward, his steps now measured and deliberate. He didn't approach the teenagers. He walked directly to the old man and stopped in front of him. He drew himself up to his full height, clicked his heels together, and rendered the sharpest, most respectful salute he had ever given in his life. The bus fell silent. The teenagers' laughter died in their throats. Every eye was now on the 2 men. The old man finally seemed to notice his. He looked at the saluting veteran, and a flicker of understanding crossed his weary face. He slowly, almost painfully, raised a trembling hand and returned the salute, a gesture of shared brotherhood that transcended time and age. The veteran lowered his hand but remained standing at attention. "Sir," he said, his voice thick with emotion, but loud enough for everyone to hear, "it is an honor to be in your presence." The teenagers looked at each other, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning shame. They didn't understand the specifics, but they understood the shift in the atmosphere. The mockery had vanished, replaced by a heavy, palpable reverence. The veteran turned his head slightly, his gaze piercing the group of boys. "This man," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "wore this uniform with more honor than you could ever imagine. That medal on his chest means he faced unimaginable horror so that you could have the freedom to sit here and disrespect him." The boys shrank back. The one with the baseball cap took it off, twisting the brim in his hands. We didn't know," he stammered, his earlier arrogance completely gone. You didn't care to know, the veteran replied sternly. You saw a worn-out uniform, and you judged. You didn't see the man. You didn't see the sacrifice. He then turned his back on them, dismissing them, and focused again on the old hero. The story, however, doesn't end there. The old man's name was Arthur. The veteran, whose name was David, stayed with him, talking quietly. David learned that Arthur was a veteran of the Korean War. He had received the Medal of Honor for single-handedly holding off an enemy advance after his entire platoon was wiped out, saving the lives of the wounded soldiers in a makeshift aid station behind him. He had been severely wounded in the process and spent months in a hospital. The uniform he wore was his original one. He wore it every year on the anniversary of that battle, not for recognition, but to honor the friends he had lost. It was a private pilgrimage, a way to remember. He wasn't looking for praise or attention. He was simply carrying the weight of his past. When Arthur's stop came, David helped him off the bus. As they stepped onto the sidewalk, one of the teenagers, the boy who had started the taunts, rushed off the bus after them. He approached Arthur hesitantly, his head bowed. "Sir," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I am so sorry. For what I said, for how we acted, it was wrong. Thank you for your service." Arthur looked at the boy. His eyes, which had seemed so distant before, were now clear and kind. He placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "Son," he said softly, "the most important battles are not always fought on the battlefield. The battle to be a good man, a kind man, that's one you fight every day. Learn from this. Be better." The boy nodded, tears welling in his eyes. That day on the bus, a simple ride turned into a profound lesson. A lesson about respect, about looking beyond appearances, and about the quiet heroes who walk among us. The faded uniform wasn't a sign of poverty or delusion. It was a cloak of honor, a testament to a life of extraordinary courage. And for a group of teenagers, and perhaps for everyone else on that bus, it was a powerful, unforgettable reminder that you should never, ever judge a book by its worn and faded cover. Because sometimes that cover holds the greatest story you will ever know. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories.